The Demon and the Witchy Board. The clock struck 11:45 in the morning, the final bell still ringing in the corridors of Evergrove High. Outside, in the shadowed crevices of the school parking lot, 5 students stood huddled together: Marcus, Tiffany, Rachel, Evan, and Leo. They had been planning for weeks to skip school for an adventure that would break the monotony of their small-town life. Today was the day they would finally go through with it. Marcus, always the one with the most daring ideas, had come prepared. "Let's play with the witchy board I found in my grandma's attic," Marcus whispered, holding up a dust-covered box with arcane symbols etched on its lid. A chill ran through the group as they stared at the worn wooden box. They had all heard stories and warnings about the dangers of messing with the supernatural, but to their adolescent minds it seemed like a thrilling way to spend the afternoon. After all, what harm could it do? It was just a game, right? The group decided to head to Marcus's house, an old 2-story structure at the edge of town, where no one would bother them. The house creaked as they entered, the walls groaning with age. They settled in the dimly lit living room and sat in a circle around the coffee table. The witchy board lay in the center, its surface dark and polished, with strange, unreadable symbols along its edges. Marcus set it up, his excitement barely contained. "Are we really going to do this?" Tiffany asked nervously, glancing around at her friends. "Come on," Marcus urged. "It's just for fun. How often do we get the chance to do something like this?" After a moment of hesitation, each of them placed a finger on the planchette. It was cold to the touch and strangely smooth, as if worn down by decades of use. "All right," Marcus began, his voice taking on a deep, dramatic tone. "Is there anyone here with us? Any spirits that wish to communicate?" Silence filled the room, a heavy, expectant silence. Just as the tension became unbearable, a gust of wind rattled the windows, causing them to jump. Then the planchette began to move slowly, inching forward as if guided by an unseen force. "Hello!" A wave of gasps rippled through the circle. Rachel's eyes widened as she looked at the others. "No way! You guys are moving it!" she accused. "I swear I'm not!" Evan protested, his face pale. The others chimed in, equally shocked by the sudden movement. Marcus swallowed, trying to maintain his composure. Who are we speaking to?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The planchette glided again, faster this time. "Tom." Marcus felt his stomach twist. Tom was the name of a classmate who had died in a car accident the previous year. Everyone at school knew about the tragedy, and now seeing his name spelled out on the board sent a cold shiver down their spines. The room grew colder. You're really Tom?" Tiffany stammered, her eyes locked on the board. "Y-E-S." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Could it really be him? Was the board actually communicating with their deceased friend? The answers they received over the next hour convinced them. They asked questions only Tom would know, about his favorite things, about the secrets he had shared with them. Each time the planchette moved with a purpose, delivering answers that were uncannily accurate. As the afternoon turned into evening, they began to relax, feeling more excited than afraid. It became a routine. Each day they skipped school, they gathered at Marcus's house to play with the board. They would call on Tom, ask him questions, laugh at his answers, and mock their previous fears. It was just a game, after all. But they never properly closed the portal. They never said goodbye. To them, it was nothing more than a bit of harmless fun. The change. Then, things began to change. It started subtly at first, small, unexplainable occurrences in Marcus's house. One evening, after they skipped their usual session, Marcus was in the kitchen when he heard a faint creaking sound. Turning, he saw the cabinet door slowly open on its own. His heart skipped a beat as he stepped back, eyes wide, but he shook it off, blaming it on a draft. However, over the next few days, the events grew more intense. Footsteps echoed in the hallways late at night, whispers filled the air when he was alone, and objects moved on their own. Marcus's friends scoffed at first, dismissing his stories as paranoia, until they too began to experience strange happenings. Tiffany's bedroom mirror cracked without cause. Evan woke up to find his bedroom door wide open despite locking it before bed, and Rachel heard faint, mocking laughter every time she was alone. Fear seeped into their minds. They regrouped at Marcus's house, determined to end what they had started. "We need to tell Tom to leave," Rachel suggested, her voice shaky. "This has gone too far." They gathered around the board, fingers trembling as they placed them on the planchette. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to sound confident. "Tom," he called out, "we need to talk." The planchette moved immediately, faster than ever before. "Yes? Listen," Evan began, his voice cracking. "We're done. We don't want to play anymore. You need to go back where you came from." For a moment, nothing happened. An oppressive silence hung in the room, so thick it made breathing difficult. Then the planchette jerked violently, spinning in circles before stopping abruptly on one word. N-O. The room grew icy, the lights flickered, and a sense of dread settled over them like a heavy blanket. Tiffany gasped, clutching her head. He's not Tom," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "It was never Tom." Marcus's heart raced. "Then who is it?" he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. The planchette glided across the board once more, spelling out the answer with a deliberate slowness that made their skin crawl. D-E-M-O-N. A collective gasp escaped their lips. They had been speaking to something far worse than they had ever imagined. And now it was clear, it had no intention of leaving. "What do you want?" Marcus croaked, fear threatening to close off his throat. The planchette stopped, paused, then slid toward a new word. Y-O-U. The temperature dropped further, their breaths visible in the frigid air. The demon had no intention of just leaving. It wanted to possess one of them, to use their body as a vessel to experience life in the flesh. "Close the portal!" Rachel shrieked. "Now!" The teens scrambled to push the planchette toward goodbye, but it resisted, held back by an unseen force. The lights in the room dimmed to near darkness, and a cacophony of whispers filled the air, growing louder, more frenzied. "It won't let us," Evan yelled, his voice tinged with desperation. "Push harder!" Marcus screamed. The group pushed with all their strength, fighting against the supernatural force holding the planchette in place. Slowly, painfully, it began to move. Creaking and groaning, it inched toward goodbye. Then, with a sudden snap, it broke free, sliding to its final destination. The room exploded with sound, a deafening roar of rage that shook the very foundations of the house. The lights flared brightly before bursting, plunging them into darkness. A moment of silence followed, heavy and expectant. Then a low chuckle filled the air. "You think you're free?" a voice hissed, echoing from the shadows. It wasn't coming from the board. It came from somewhere within the room. Marcus shined his flashlight, scanning the area. In the corner stood a shadow, its form indistinct but with glowing red eyes that pierced through the darkness. It moved forward, extending its clawed hands as the teens screamed and scrambled backward. "No, get away!" Tiffany yelled, but the figure moved closer, reaching out as if to grab one of them. Desperately, they huddled together, holding hands, chanting goodbye repeatedly, hoping it would send the demon back. The shadowy figure halted, its form wavering as if caught between two worlds. With one final guttural growl, it dissipated into the air, leaving behind a silence so profound it hurt their ears. For a few moments, they sat there in stunned silence, catching their breath, hearts racing. Did we do it?" Evan asked, his voice trembling. "I think so," Marcus replied, his eyes scanning the room. The air felt lighter, warmer. It seemed the malevolent presence had left. The aftermath. They stood up shakily, avoiding each other's eyes. "Let's never talk about this again," Rachel muttered, wiping tears from her cheeks. The others nodded in agreement. They gathered their things, glancing one last time at the board that lay abandoned on the floor. One by one, they left the house, stepping into the cool evening air. Relief washed over them as they made their way down the street, leaving behind the horrors of that darkened room. None of them noticed the faint red glow that lingered in the planchette, an ominous reminder that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. As they walked, Marcus fell behind, his steps slowing, his eyes glazed over momentarily, his expression shifting from confusion to a strange, unsettling calm. Then he smiled, a smile that wasn't his own. The others called out to him, but he simply nodded, forcing a weak laugh. They didn't notice the way his eyes flickered red in the dim light, or the way his voice seemed to have taken on a deeper, more sinister tone when he finally spoke. "Don't worry," Marcus murmured, his lips curling into a smile. "Everything's going to be just fine." Unbeknownst to his friends, the demon had succeeded. It had taken what it wanted all along. And now, it walked among them, biding its time, waiting for the moment when it could unleash its darkness once more. And as the night settled over Evergrove, a faint whisper echoed through the trees, a whisper filled with malice and hunger. "I am here, and I am not alone." They nodded in agreement, hastily gathering their things. As they left the house, none of them noticed the faint glow that remained in the planchette, a reminder that some doors, once opened, are never truly closed. And though they thought they were free, a final sinister whisper filled the empty room. "I will be back when you call again."